Well, so I've used Wave a little bit. I don't know a whole lot about it. I found it initially very confusing. But to me, Wave is not really the execution of this first version. It's the technology behind it. And I think technology is fantastic. And I like that Google sort of opened it up for other people. So like we could use Wave stuff in our products and someone else could use Wave stuff in their products. But really what it is, it's all about real time. And real time is kind of here and now. And that's kind of what's going on right now. And that's interesting. But we're not like jumping into the real time thing because I want to sort of see how it shakes out a little bit because I think it might be a little bit overblown. So I'll be curious to see how that all shakes out. But yeah, Google's a real competitor, as are hundreds of other companies. I'm a lot more afraid of kind of the small guy in the garage who is going to come out of nowhere with something that beats us than the big guys. But you know what? We don't worry about the competition because what can I do about them? I can't. If Google's going to do something, what am I going to do? Beat Google at their game? No, I'm going to have to beat Google at our game, which is delivering a product that's really, really good for a certain niche that we really know a lot about and we can focus on, and we can find customers who agree with us. Google, in order for Google to be successful, they have to have billions of people who agree with them. We only have to have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. So I'm not afraid of any one company because of that. Like there's a lot of small groups of 10, 20, 50,000 people who we could attract. And that's all that really matters to me. Our level of, our qualifiers for success are much different than Google's. But the small guy in the garage, he could probably hurt us. So I'm not paying attention to them and I can't do anything about them either. But it's interesting to keep an eye on them. But fundamentally, I think companies are far too focused on competition and not focused enough on their own products. And they're always trying to follow everybody else. And you end up in this Cold War. This is the problem with competition. You end up in this Cold War where everyone's trying to outdo each other. And this is what happens in the software world, where one company has a feature, and then you've got to come out with a new feature because they have it. And then you come out with something, and then they have to have it. And everyone's trying to outdo each other. We try and underdo everybody else. We try and make the simplest possible thing that we can do that solves a real problem. And we're always trying to be the simplest option on the market. And if we can always be the simplest option, I think we're in a really, really, really good position. I think if you're trying to be the most complicated option on the market, you're in deep trouble. So as long as we can stay simpler than everybody else, I'm pretty happy. So the first project we built was Basecamp, and that was all about solving a real problem that we had, which was project management or project collaboration with clients. We had clients as a web design firm. And we found that most of the project management tools that existed at the time were all solving the wrong problems. They were solving the problems about control. And to us, project management isn't control, it's about communication. And so we wanted to build a tool that allowed us to communicate with our clients. That's where projects go wrong, is people don't communicate. It's not that there aren't enough charts and graphs and statistics and numbers. It's that there isn't a place to communicate centrally. So we built a tool that lets you communicate with your clients online in a central location. So you don't have to send emails back and forth, and you keep all the discussions centralized. Everyone knows where everything's going on. You can share files centrally. You can share to-do lists centrally. You can share a simple calendar. Basically, a few simple tools that let you collaborate on projects. So that was Basecamp. We had that problem, so we solved it. The next major product we built was something called Backpack, which was, we found that Basecamp was actually, as simple as Basecamp was, it was too complicated for really simple things. And that didn't require client collaboration, just like internal little mini projects and things like that. So we built Backpack, which basically lets you take a whole project sort of and put it on a single page. You can have a page of to-dos and a page of files and a page of communications and that sort of stuff. So we built Backpack. That was in 2005, I think. The next major project was Campfire, which we needed because we're a virtual company. So we have, although I kind of hate that term, but we're a company. We're not virtual, we're a company. 8 people in Chicago, 8 people in 8 other cities around the world. At this time it was smaller. Maybe we had 12 people or something total, but we're spread out. And we needed a way to kind of talk to everybody all the time on a level playing field. We couldn't have a really cool thing in Chicago because people would be left out who lived in Idaho or North Carolina or California or New York who worked for us. So we built Campfire, which is this persistent chat room that's always open for a group. We can share files in real time, we can have discussions in real time, share computer code in real time, all the stuff. We have transcripts so we can jump back, who said what on Thursday, who said what 3 months ago, search the transcripts for this link that we all shared and whatever. So we built that to solve that problem. And the last product we built, something called Highrise, which is a tool that we built, which is really taking off right now, which is sort of it's in the CRM world, which is customer relationship management, which is too confusing to begin with. Those products are way too complicated. Salesforce.com is sort of the big product in that area. We looked at those because we need to start, we're talking to a lot of people in the press, and we need a way to keep track of them. Like who we talked to, when we talked to them, what we said, when to follow up next, what they said. And we looked at some of these CRM tools, and they were just so complicated and hard to use and like overblown. And so we built Highrise, which basically lets you keep track of who you talked to, what they said, what you said, and what to do next. So I'd make a page for you, for example, and after this interview is done, I'll go to this page, and this page has your contact information in a big text field, and I can enter notes. You know, had this conversation, did this interview, we talked about this, that, and the other thing. So when you and I talk again in 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years, I can go back and review the previous conversations we had so I know, so I'm up to date and prepared to talk to you next time. What I was finding out was that I would go talk to somebody, and I talked to them 3 weeks ago, and I'd forgotten what I said and what they said. So I felt like I was starting over every time I talked to somebody, and that's no way to do business. So this is a great way to keep track of the history of conversations. But the key point is we're solving problems that we have, and what we're finding is that, especially because of the internet today, we can reach so many people who have the same kind of problems. We couldn't do this 20 years ago, where software was sold on a shelf. And the shelf space was based on your market share, and like if you didn't have that, you're over. Today, the internet is the biggest shelf that there is, and you can reach anybody you need to reach, and you can find so many like-minded companies and people that if you can find 20 or 30 or 40, 50,000 people who pay you $50 a month, do the math. Like that's a really good revenue stream. And if you have multiple products like that, you're making serious, serious cash, and you can be a small company doing this. So Ruby on Rails, briefly, and I'm not a technical person, so no one's going to get confused by this because I can't confuse myself here. Ruby is actually a programming language, just like something like PHP or Java. People may have heard of these things. Rails is this thing that sits on top of Ruby that makes it really easy to write web-based applications. And we built the Rails part. Ruby already existed. It's actually a language out of Japan. So Ruby on Rails is this thing that we built that sits on top of Ruby. Anyway, we built it by accident. Sort of like I was alluding to earlier, we didn't set out to build Ruby on Rails. We set out to build Basecamp, which was our first product, which is a project management tool. And we used the language Ruby to do that. But as we were building it, we realized that there's probably things we would use over and over and over if we were to build another product. And so we found out that after we built Basecamp, we could extract some of the stuff that we built with Basecamp and reuse it again for another product or something else. And so we extracted Ruby on Rails. We extracted this programming framework from something we already made. And then we polished it up a little bit and open sourced it because we believe that infrastructure is something that should be open source for the most part. That the real benefits of open source make sense in the infrastructure world because you have tons of people with lots of different problems that can solve these problems better than you can and can contribute code back and that whole thing. So we're not an infrastructure company, so it doesn't make sense for us to make money on infrastructure. So we open sourced it, and because of that, it's way better, miles better than we could have ever made it ourselves. So that definitely made sense for us. Well, there's a lot of really great frameworks out there. And there's a lot of great languages. A lot of people like Django, which is built on top of Python, and there's some other Rails or Ruby frameworks and stuff. But Rails 3 is coming out soon, and Rails 3 is a huge improvement from what I understand. I'm not a programmer myself, but my guys are, and they're really pumped about Rails 3. So Rails 3 improves performance and makes a lot of things much easier that used to be sort of difficult. So Rails is very, very alive and very kicking, and right now it's definitely the leader in its area. And I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's not the goal for Rails. The goal for Rails is not to be enterprise and accepted around the world. We could give a shit who uses Rails. You know, I don't care. But if it works for you, use it. That's what matters. And if it works for us, we're going to use it. It's not like a pissing match with another language or who's first and second. But like, we love it, and a lot of people love it, and that's all that really matters.